evening. We're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Dr. Means, if you would conduct our roll call.
Sure. Dr. Maddox?
Present.
Dr. Knox?
Hello. Here.
Very good. Dr. Huber?
Here.
Dr. Cam?
Here.
Ms. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Worthy?
Here.
Dr. Dykeman?
Yeah.
Dr. Berry?
Here.
Mr. Davis?
Here.
Thank you. We are at the place in our agenda where we can amend and or adopt the agenda. So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor.
Madam President, I would like to make a modification to the agenda for your consideration, board's consideration. I would like to modify number 3, which is state's action to purchase 394 South Village to discussion regarding 394 South Village. I can explain more if this motion passes during the presentation.
Okay. And so that is a recommendation or a motion. Is there a second? Discussion? Dr. Knox?
I would prefer to go ahead. I'm ready to vote, and I think many of my colleagues on the board are ready to vote.
Okay, thank you. Others? Dr. Means?
I just have a question. If we have a discussion today, we definitely won't take action today, or when will we, don't do it today?
It's a great question. I was going to get into this a little later in the presentation, but the board on July 18th approved the purchase contract for the property at 394 South Village. What you have to decide to do is to either move forward with that purchase, or there's a couple of things you can do. If you decide to move forward with the purchase, then you have to approve not only the funds for the purchase, but also the dollars requested for renovation, or you have to vote to cancel. So there's really two paths you can go. Per the contract, the district has to either cancel the contract by October 16th or do nothing. And if you do nothing, then the purchase contract that you approved on July 18th will move forward. But then it will still require you to approve the use of SPOS dollars for renovation. So your vote is, you have to decide on what you're going to vote on, and either you're voting on moving forward with the purchase and approving renovation dollars, or you're voting to cancel the purchase. And I guess I apologize, Dr. Dykeman. And so we believe, in talking with legal counsel, we believe that there is ample time for you to hear this presentation tonight. Again, a very similar presentation that Mr. Fisher and I provided to the board during executive session of the property committee meeting. We're prepared to make this presentation public tonight and allow the board to ask additional questions around this potential transaction. So we have time up until October 9th.
Mr. Davis?
It doesn't preclude us coming to a vote. This discussion does not preclude us ever from coming to a vote.
You would, then I think you have to decide on what the vote's going to be, right? Right. So if it's about the purchase of 394 South Village, then it should be about the purchase price, which is $6.7 million, plus the recommendation of the renovation dollars. If there is a motion to cancel the purchase contract, then that also should be an item that would be modified, that would come towards modification of this agenda. So I don't know which vote we would pursue.
So I think that, to me, is like confusing because just the action to purchase is probably the things of discussion allows us those flexibility to go in either direction. Is that right? I'm good.
Mr. Davis?
Yeah, I mean, there were so many.
Don't talk loud.
It's probably broken. Steve.
Yeah, this is my broken one. Okay.
Talking later, Francis.
And I do appreciate that, Dr. Means, because I mean, I've had pits in my stomach all day, thinking that this was going to be pressed forward today. But there are so many different moving pieces in terms of the property issue that are in my mind. You know, in terms of using SPOS dollars, and I know this is just one piece of it. But the thing is that one thing that I think that we have been doing is taking one piece at a time, and I don't see that we have an overall plan. And so I'm at the point right now where, you know, I can't go forward. And, you know, that may be different in a couple months from now, once we've kind of re-looked at all the moving pieces. But I know where I'm at now, and a week is not going to change it. But, you know, I'm just speaking for myself, obviously.
Dr. Thomas?
I thought another problem was that we needed to move with as much speed as possible because of the career cap.
That is accurate, and that is still the case.
No, the floor is open for discussion. Are there any more discussion points before we take a vote on this amendment?
So does this more or less mean that changing the agenda to discussion about purchase of 394 South Village just pushes the vote potentially to our next meeting?
We could move it to when you as a board can decide to move the actual action item, Dr. Berry, to October 3rd and make October 3rd a special call meeting, or you can wait to the business meeting of October, I think it's October 10th. I think either the 2nd or 3rd is when we have our work session, which is next week, and then the following week, which I think is the 9th. Is it 10th? So the 3rd and the 10th. You still have two other opportunities to vote on this item if you want to move it either to the 3rd or the 10th.
So we could have a vote during, if we call the special meeting.
You would have to call it a special call.
On October 3rd,
Third.
which is before the October 9th.
16th. So the deadline to respond one way and the response is very clear. You have two chances to vote and have deeper conversation. And so administratively, I'm trying to create that space for the Board of Education for you to have a public conversation. We've had this discussion in executive session, but I want to capture your questions that have come through the months of us discussing this item and address questions. You have two opportunities, either October 3rd or October 10th. And perhaps through this presentation, there may be additional questions that will emerge. The action that you have to be cautious of and cognizant of is that you have approved to purchase 394 South Village by virtue of your vote on July 18th. So if you remember, we discussed that would move forward unless during the due diligence period we found something that would preclude us from not buying it. In our presentation that we hope to provide this evening, we're going to share with you and the public that we don't believe that there's anything that would prevent us from moving forward.
Mr. Worthy?
Yes, I wanted to speak on this. Listen to what Dr. Long said, and I totally agree with that. The only way, excuse me, the academy is going to grow. We keep talking about growth. We can't grow. Part of the central office is still located in this building. Next thing I want to say that I have an opportunity on Tuesday, the 24th, to tour 394 Village building. And I think I sent this to you all in an email. totally impressed with the condition of that building. I can recall when the central office moved from downtown, where Hotel Indigo is now, and moved to Mason Bridge Road. When you look at it realistically, there's no comparison. Now, the next thing I want to say that I know we're looking at $6-some million for the purchase of the building, 4.3 for renovation is worth every penny, folks. Because what's going on in Athens, that's prime real estate. Not to even think about the cost of it now, what it would look like 2, 3, not even say 5 years from now. Okay? I think it's prime real estate, and I think that it would be I know that it's a darn good investment. That's my take on 394 millage, and I encourage any of you to go and take a look at that building.
Okay. So I know that.
Just coming back to what's on the floor here, I just think in the interest of transparency for the public, if we have an agenda and we have items that we probably should have made a fix to this ahead of time. So I just want to go ahead with what the public thought we were going to do.
Okay. Mr. Davis.
Yeah, I just,
Excuse me. Mr. Worthy, I'm you know, this idea of the Career Academy needing the space, we all agree. I think the question comes in, it's like you just got a job and you need a car to get to work, but you may not buy the first car that you see, or the second, or the third, or the fourth. I feel like that, you know, if this property is, you know, if it's like meant to be, it won't happen even if it's 2 months from now. What I'm afraid of is that without fully discussing, I mean, we can always rent space. I would rather, let me just put it that way, I would rather rent space for pieces of the central office and allow, for instance, at the manufacturing facility where, you know, behind where the Parent Information Center is, I would rather move the Parent Information Center and allow that expansion to take place than buy something that we may regret in a couple of years. And so that's why I don't do very well under pressure in terms of you either do it now or you don't do it at all. And so that's my response. But I'm very cognizant of the fact that the Career Academy needs space, and I think we should plan on providing it to them certainly by September next year.
So, point of order, we have a motion to amend the agenda to change action to purchase to discussion. I second that motion. We've had questions and discussion on that. Vote.
I think so. I think we're prepared to take a vote. So all of those that are in favor of modifying number 3, which is the action to purchase 394 South Village Avenue, to discussion, if you would show by raising your hand. And those that are opposed, if you would, by saying something. Okay, now, so that item passed. Now we need to vote on the agenda as amended. Is there a motion to?
I move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Mr. Davis, any discussion on this item? Okay, all in favor of? All right, we are now at the discussion for 394 South Village.
Thank you, Madam President, board members. I'll try to go through these 10 slides in an efficient manner, and if you have questions, I would welcome you to stop me. The current condition, the Clark County School District sold a property that served as the district office at the conclusion of the 2015-2016 school year. That's the Mitchell Bridge property. And looking at our transaction that actually sold in May of 2015, that property served as a district office for many years. The transition that resulted in the sale of the Mitchell Bridge property resulted in the district amassing a profit of nearly $2 million. That profit has been designated for the potential purchase of a new district office. And so I think it's important to note that any purchase of a district office, we have a fund, it's called Fund 101, and the profit from that sale goes towards the purchase of a new district office. District office functions have been relocated to 2 different places. This current location that we're at right now, which is H.T. Edwards, and also the Whitehead Annex. And that's been in place since the 16-17 school year. So when you look at H.T. Edwards, it's a facility of 71,650 square feet, of which 36,042 square feet are used for district office functions. There's a total of 72 parking spots that are used here at this facility, mainly for district office functions. There's an additional 8,300 square feet used at the Whitehead Annex, where mainly our financial team is located, along with some special education staff are located there as well. We mentioned the impact on the Career Academy before the modification to the agenda took place. Currently, the Athens Community Career Academy has an enrollment of 305 students for this school year, which is a significant increase from last school year. The additional 36,042 square feet, parking spots, and facility flexibility gained through the potential district office services moving would greatly benefit the Career Academy. It's also important to note that the school district and Career Academy board members and staff have worked with business leaders and manufacturer leaders in the community who have made a commitment to modifying this space, but that has a very limited timeline on usage of those funds. And so in other words, there have been community companies who have stepped forward and said, we are willing to help modify the H.T. Edwards facility to meet the needs of the Career Academy, as long as you can very respectfully but quickly move the district office out of that facility. So the proposed purchase. Before we get to the proposed purchase, I think it's just important to note that the district has been focused on trying to find a permanent district office since early 2018. And I think there have been rumors in the community, so let me confirm some of these items. We have looked at many different locations throughout this community, ranging from the old or former Hobby Lobby facility to looking at a space in the Georgia Square Mall to looking obviously at the current Georgia Power Building. We have been stirring and looking throughout the community for a property that could meet the needs of our district office. We believe through our search, and I think this is important to know because we're not just stumbling across this property as the latest and greatest. We've been on a very diligent search for a district office for a long time now. And we believe that the property on 394 South Village does meet our needs for a district office. So a few facts concerning 394 South Village. The facility is 37,985 square feet. There are 115 marked parking spaces. The asking price for the facility is $6,700,000. We are projecting that the renovation cost would be close to $4.3 million for a total cost of $10,995,673. We believe that we can occupy the facility as soon as January of 2020. Currently, it's being occupied and is being rented by the University of Georgia for their development functions as a university. If you want to know more about the due diligence work that our operations division conducted, and what I mean by our operations department, Mr. Fisher and his team did an examination of the facility, and they looked at all the different functions and the condition of the facility. You can look at the executive summary. You can also look at an FAQ that has started to emerge from some board members going to tour the facility. Just if I could just take a point of privilege here, one of the main questions was the $4,300,000 price tag for renovation costs. Where is the majority of those funds going toward? And we believe that we would have to take a conference room that is currently on the first floor of that facility and expand some walls to create a board room. This current facility that we're in is a little over 3,000 square feet. By renovating a current space in that facility that is a conference room, we could create a space that would be 3,500 square feet. So it would be very comparable to this facility, and would allow us to have a board meeting space. There has been a question from a board member asked a question a few weeks ago in regards to comparable properties and what the price has been for a property like the 394 South Millage property. You'll see that comparison here in regards to the actual square footage, the sales price, and what that sale price square footage comes out to be. I think Mr. Worthy said it earlier. When we think about commercial property in Athens, Clark County, the location of this property is really ideal for us, and the sale price is something that we are we're excited about. So there was criteria used as we look for different facilities. We looked for a pre-existing structure. We were under the assumption that we could not build a brand new district office. We wanted to have a facility that was located on the bus line for the public's sake, and making sure that people could get to the facility in an easy manner. We wanted to have a location that was large enough to accommodate the majority of our district office staff. Operations, and when I say operations, I mean our custodial, plant services, SWAS departments. They're located on Paradise, and they have a good facility. We're not looking to have them come over to this location. We also had a criteria point of having at least 100 parking spaces. And so from our criteria, and this criteria was something that emerged not only from our administrative lens, but also through conversations with the board during deliberations as we looked at multiple sites. This became the criteria for us. So during our conversation about the agenda, there was a comment made about the vision for the remaining SPLOST 5 projects. Based on commerce in Clark County, we are projecting that there will be $32 million remaining in the SPLOST 5 projects. And we have identified as an administrative team 5 major projects to be accomplished for the remaining SPLOST 5. This 394 South Millage is one. You see it there. We are very excited about the possibility of moving forward with the West Broad Early Learning and Community Complex, and we've projected that price to be at $10 million. We've started the process of engaging our high school principals and athletic directors around the concept of renovating our athletic fields and tracks at $2.5 million per high school, or a total of $5 million. And we've discussed, and this discussion started with the long-range facility report that actually was released to the public in November of 2018, looking at additions at elementary schools. There were 5 elementary schools identified in total, J.J. Harris, Timothy Road, Wood Davis, and then Chase Street and Gaines. And we believe that Chase Street and Gaines should be addressed within this SPLOST 5 allotment still. And so you'll see our vision for the remaining dollars for SPLOST 5. Let me pause here and be very deliberate and direct. In November of 2018, we discussed the concept of, with the remaining funds, do you move forward and build a brand new Clark Middle school, or do you try to spread those remaining funds and address many other projects? Our administrative recommendation was that we would try to address many different projects with the remaining $32 million. Mainly because we know that the final price tag for the construction of Hillsman was near a little over $25 million. And when you also consider the fact that our SPLOST 5 projects for BHL and COIL, they went over in terms of price and what we projected, we felt that it would be more prudent and conservative to address the construction of a brand new Clark Middle School in SPLOST 6. And so with the remaining $32 million that we're projecting for SPLOST 5, we felt that we could serve the community more effectively with these various projects versus honing in on the one project. The last thing I would say is that there's precedent in our school district for identifying, because I'm sure I'm anticipating the question of, but we said we would address middle schools on the SPLOST 5 ballot. There's a precedent in the school district where projects have been identified and they've been moved to the next SPLOST. Legal counsel has shared with us clearly that if you place a project on a ballot, the district has an obligation to eventually complete the project. We're not suggesting that we're not going to complete the project, but it's our recommendation that it's not completed within the SPLOST 5 timeframe. So what's next and what's at stake? We've had the discussion this evening around this property at 394 South Millage. There has been questions among board members that perhaps having more space and time for the public to digest this information, for board members to sit with this information and ask more questions would be wise. And my recommendation, Madam President, and board members, that we create a space during the work session next week for board members to ask even more questions. And we could create a Q&A section during the work session. That's what a work session should be. But I would ask at the end of that Q&A that the board decide if there will be an agenda item for the October 9th meeting to either A, move forward and approve the allocation of up to $4.3 million for renovations to the purchase property of 394 South Millage, or place the agenda item on the October 9th board agenda to cancel the purchase. You don't have to act on the purchase of the 394 South Millage property again, because you already voted on it on July 18th. So you voted to purchase it. The only thing you have to do is either give us the approval to move forward with the $4.3 million for renovations, or you have to vote to cancel that purchase. We would take action on the agenda item that you want to move forward from October 3rd on October 9th. If the purchase contract is affirmed and the renovation approval is passed, action to approve contractors would also come before the board during the months of November through January and beyond. So the board will continue to have approval authority over this project as it moves forward.
Dr. Mills, those dates, that date would be the 10th, right?
I'm sorry, the 10th. So it'll be October 3rd and October 10th. Thank you. And I think that's the conclusion of my report.
I just have a point of clarification real quick. So if we vote on October the 10th, okay, we've already approved the purchase of the property.
Yes, you have.
If on October the 10th, by October the 10th, if we decide not to purchase it, is the horse already out of the barn, or what would we do October the 10th if the decision is we don't want to purchase it?
Then you have to vote to formally cancel the contract.
Okay, so the October 10th meeting, if there were a motion to counsel, we would have to counsel the purchasing agreement,
Yes.
and that's the drop dead date.
Yes, it is. And well, technically, I'm asking you to act on this at the October 3rd meeting, so then we know what we have to do. Because between this discussion, and I hope questions that will ensue this evening, and then questions that will ensue on October 3rd, I would hope by the end of the evening at October 3rd, you will know what you want to do as a body. And so you either have to decide we're canceling the purchase or we're moving forward with the purchase. And you would then move forward an agenda item that represents one of those two pathways.
And so then on the 10th will be more of a formality, like.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Beard.
Hi, could you go back to the SPOS list? Yes. So you have the millage at 10.9, but 2 million of that is available. So shouldn't that actually out of SPOS be 8.9?
It could. I wanted to represent the total price. That's why I have the little mark at the bottom of the chart to say. But there is $2 million in fund enrollment.
And sorry, one of my other question. So certainly I have been hearing concerns from the community about Clark Middle. So if Clark Middle was moved to East Los 6, I would assume that it would be a priority.
It will be. I've said since November of 2018 it will be the first priority of SPLOS 6.
So given what we know about how much, more or less what we know about how much East Los money we generate, what would we be able to project as far as, you know, a move-in date for Clark Middle? Would you guess?
I wouldn't want to guess right now. I would want to talk with our team at the SPLOS department and give you a firmer time frame. If there's a few assumptions. The first assumption is passage of the eSPLOS, which I believe would be in 2022. And then the next step would be developing a time frame. And so I would hate to just shoot at the hip with you this evening. I would want to touch base with Mr. Gilbreth and Mr. Fisher and give you a more definitive time frame next week, Thursday.
Dr. Yeager and then Dr. Miles.
I was going to ask about how it's unclear whether the building is large enough to meet the needs that you've stated in the November document that I looked at from the past. It said something about 60,000 square feet. Can you explain why we can now suddenly not grow in our administrative office?
I think the 60,000 square feet benchmark was always used. It was used even when my predecessor thought that West Broad, the West Broad campus, could serve as a location for a district office. When you look at the configuration of the the facility at 394 South Millage, there are currently 141 offices in that building. And even with the reconfiguration of the conference room to have a board room of 3,500 square feet, there would still be 118 offices in that facility. That would be more than enough office space for our current district office configuration. In fact, there would be 10 offices unused or not available for growth if there's any district office work. So in other words, the configuration of that 37,000 square feet allows us to have the number of offices necessary to serve our staff.
Dr. Moon.
Yes. So, as you could tell from the agenda, I came ready to vote, and so I did prepare a document, but Mr. Worthy, I provided that, and to the board president, and also sent it to the superintendent. So, pursuant to Board Policy BH, Board Code of Ethics, Domain 5.6 and 7. Everybody hear me? 6, make decisions in accordance with the interests of the school system as a whole and not any particular segment thereof. 7, express opinions before votes are cast. Also pursuant to policy CF, Board School Superintendent Relations. As legally designated governing body, the board retains final fiduciary and policy authority within the district. And in the spirit of long-time draft policy BHAA, Board Statement of Norms, ahead of any vote, board members are encouraged to explain the reason for their vote. That's not yet policy, but we've certainly talked about it for a while. And so I will now explain my upcoming vote, whenever that may be, on the South Millage Avenue property proposal with context and perspective, and I have the floor. The board has been asked tonight, or at some point, to spend a total of up to $11 million on district office space, $6.7 million on 394 South Millage property, and an additional $4.3 million on renovations to this 1973 property. The cost for district office space has skyrocketed 54% in less than a year. The board was told in a Q&A document from the superintendent of the board on the morning of November 15th, 2018, that the cost for district offices would be $6.5 million, $2.5 million for property, $4 million in renovation. In that same November 15, 2018 document, the superintendent informed the board regarding district offices that, and I quote, the district is seeking a minimum of 65,000 square feet to 70,000 square feet. All staff located at the H.D. Edwards and Whitehead Annex would move into the new board office facility. On December 18, 2018, a board communication from the superintendent to the Board of Education indicated the needs were 65,000 to 75,000 square feet. The superintendent indicated to the board that he had discussed these dimensions, that is the 65,000 to 75,000 square foot target, with County Manager Blaine Williams. The 394 South Millage Avenue property is not 65,000 to 70,000 square feet. It is under 38,000 square feet, as you have seen. The size of the 394 South Millage Avenue property is, at best, less than 60% of the district's needs as expressed on multiple documented occasions in late 2018. At worst, the South Millage property is only half of what we need for district offices at a total cost of $11 million. The board and the realtor representing our district have been told stories about how the South Millage property is enough for our needs. However, up to tonight, no numbers have been provided to buttress this assertion, and I did ask 4 separate times. As a scientist, I stick to numbers. The numbers that are available to me, and have been provided to me also today, indicate that if we approve this property purchase tonight, we will be spending over 50% too much for a property that is also 40 to 50% too small. This is a boondoggle. The definition of boondoggle, according to Wikipedia, and this is one of the nicer definitions, is a project that is considered a waste of both time and money, yet is often continued due to extraneous policy or political motivations. The 394 South Millage Avenue proposal fits the definition of a boondoggle to a T. As such, I will be voting no on the property proposal whenever that vote is. Now, I could stop there, but more needs to be said. to place my no vote in the proper context and perspective of CCSD, the board, and Clark County as a whole. As Ecclesiastes 3:7 says, and as Martin Luther King quoted it a year before his murder, there is a time to break silence. To follow up on the definition of boondoggle, why on earth would this school district spend a whopping $11 million on a too small property and expensive 5 points? How does this relate to student achievement and equity work? Let's follow the money and the extraneous motivations. The realtor representing the district on the South Village property is a former vice president of this very school board. While on the board in 2017, this realtor participated in the sale of a house to the superintendent, which to anyone on the outside would seem to be a textbook violation of board policy PHA, board member conflict of interest points 1 and 4, regarding making money off of proprietary information. It is perhaps relevant that at last Friday's training meeting of the board, we learned that this board has been in violation of another part of policy PHA, point parentheses 2 at the bottom, for most of this decade. The board has much work to do to catch up with other districts around the state in terms of ethics, and that's what we learned from the GSBA experts Friday night. Now back to the realtor. This realtor, no longer on our board, has represented the district in at least 2 separate property situations relating to district offices and perhaps more. Information about the realtor's activities has been sketchy, at least to me as an individual board member, because the relationship is said to be under the $80,000 threshold of superintendent actions that require board approval that our revised policy states. However, board policy BBA B.7 requires that the board be notified of expenditures under $80,000. Current board members have expressed concern about this relationship and have asked for a request for proposals or an RFP with regard to the realtor. Now, why an RFP? So that the entire community, and not just one former board member, could be considered for the job of representing the district in property negotiations, and therefore could reap the profits of commissions on the sale of multi-million-dollar properties. These concerns are equity work, and I applaud Dr. Tawana Maddox for leading the charge on this request for equity in our work with realtors. However, despite Dr. Maddox's 4-month-plus quest to open up the selection of a realtor to the wider Clark County community, the district has stuck with the current realtor. The estimated commission from the sale of 394 South Village is roughly, or more, of $250,000. An RFP process would at least offer the potential to spread the wealth of taxpayer monies and not concentrate it in the hands of one realtor who is a former board officer. But that's not all. Keep following the big money. A commission of $250,000 is chump change compared to the property sale price of $6.7 million. Where is all that taxpayer money proposed to go? The sellers of 394 South Village represent interests whose ancestors have been in Athens for at least a century, and through some branches of the family tree, all the way back to the Linden family of Linden House fame, of antebellum Athens fame. I am assured by one of the amateur historians and raconteurs of Athens that the main owner of 394 South Village comes from, quote, generous, kind-hearted people, and I don't doubt it. I even know one of his siblings. I even go to church with one of his siblings. They are very nice, very generous, very wealthy, and very white. Yeah, I just went there. I just said it. They are very nice, very generous, very wealthy, and very white. That's business as usual in Athens, and it is the opposite of equity work. SPLOST is a regressive sales tax. Even if Notre Dame fans get hit with the tax, so do we Athenians, and that includes poor people. And that includes people of color. Spending $6.7 million of taxpayers' money on a pricey property for district offices with that money ending up in the hands of the pretty old Athens property owners, that's not equity work. That's business as usual. That's a transfer of money from poor people of color to rich white people, the way it's been done in Athens and elsewhere around our nation for centuries. That has to stop. And it has to stop now if we're going to do the real hard work of equity. We're going to have to stop relying on generosity and fix inequality. Generosity is table scraps. Generosity takes at most a little bit of the edge off of inequality. Generosity doesn't change inequality. You could argue that generosity reinforces inequality by giving a little away in exchange for not questioning the overall system of inequality. We're going to have to stop dealing with just our friends, the realtors, and open the job up to anyone and everyone. There's got to be at least one African-American realtor in this town. I
I know because he's been giving me grief on social media all week long. There's got to be more than one law firm in town to represent us, not just the firm that's represented us for a half century or more. I know there's at least one African-American lawyer in Athens because he's been giving me grief on social media too. But without RFP processes, it's just the same old, business as usual. We're going to have to stop spending top dollar for district offices that don't directly impact student achievement and redirect those dollars so that they can help, however legally possible, the students and teachers in the classrooms. It's not the school district's job to jack up property values in 5 points and to take expensive property off the tax rolls to boot. That's not what our school district should be doing. And when we do spend money on district offices, we need to be frugal and not reinforce and redouble the inequities that already exist in Athens-Clarke County. Now, if you give me a proposal that truly addresses equity, I'll vote for it in a heartbeat. There's no equity that I see in this proposal. So that's why I will at some point vote no. This proposal is a boondoggle that doesn't do equity work at all. This proposal is a reverse Robin Hood, taking from the poor and giving to the wealthy. It's wrong financially, it's wrong morally, and it's just plain wrong. Those who support this proposal and who also claim to be invested in equity work for the children of Athens-Clarke County are contradicting themselves. There's no equity here. Those who support this proposal and want real change and real equity in Athens have been bamboozled about this boondoggle, and they need to wake up and see the light. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts about this? Mr. Davis and Ms. Davis.
One thing you said, Dr. Means, which was interesting to me, you said that the assumption is that we could not build a new building. And so, since I've been around, when you were hired, maybe I gave you that assumption as an individual board member, and I wasn't aware of it. So as you've been looking at the different properties, different options for a board office, you never considered actually building a new office building and look at what the cost of that would be?
So there's 2 properties that we own. We own some property near Vincent Drive, and building a new facility on that site would not meet the criteria of being on a bus line and not being centrally located. There's another property that we own, which is the old gang site, and that, again, I believe would pose challenges, but we haven't explored it because there has been, I've received in our executive sessions direction that perhaps that's not the direction that the board wants to go. Typically, new construction can cost anywhere between $200,000 to $250,000, depending on the construction component of things. So then you have to decide, so how large of a facility do you want to construct, and when do you start the construction? So to answer your question directly, Mr. Davis, if the board is giving me direction to perhaps pursue the possibility of building a brand new district office, we can. That has not been the direction that's been taken.
I'll follow up.
Okay.
In terms of the cost estimate, and I know that we've talked about this, and it's one of the things that caused me to not want to move forward, because I have so many questions about, the actual cost. But when I looked at the cost of Hillsborough Middle School, and I did the math, the square footage of Hillsborough and the cost of Hillsborough. When I did the math is not my forte, but I can divide. And the cost was $158 plus architectural and design fees. which I Googled, and it can be, they said anywhere from $1.25, which I don't believe you could ever do that for $1.25 per square foot, up to $10, which presumably would probably be more in tune with New York. So I just put a figure of $5 or $6. In which case, you know, building a new building would be, let's say 163, 164 per square foot. If we wanted something to look attractive, like we've done an amazing job at Hillsborough, just amazing. And so, you know, that is one consideration I've got. I know that when we talked about construction of a new facility, because it has been brought up, you know, in the last couple of weeks, you know, one thing that you have pointed to is the fact that we are hoping that the county will take advantage of pieces of that space of old gains. And I did do, you know, talking to my representatives in county government, I think that it is an excellent opportunity there for a public library, provided that the county SPLOST passes. So I can say vote for the county SPLOST, just not the school board SPLOST. But anyway, what's being projected there is a 20,000 square foot building.
A Boys and Girls Club.
No, it's a library.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt you. But
Yeah, sure.
The school district actually engaged the county government and made a proposal for a project, and we did it in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Club. That project has moved forward, and we have shared with the county government that we are willing to provide the property, which would be the old Kane site, for the location of that Boys and Girls Club. So I don't know where your stream of thought is going as it relates to using that parcel of land, but we successfully, earlier this calendar year, worked with the county government to have a joint partnership with the Boys and Girls Club to have a facility built there. I've also mentioned to the board in the past that the district has also been approached by Junior Achievement, in that there is a donor that has talked about providing up to $4 million for a potential Biz Town facility on that same parcel of land. So we believe there are other opportunities for students, and making that a very exciting area on that campus. Placing a district office there would clearly, it could cause some challenges in terms of space.
Okay, can
Let's go to Ms. Davis, and then
So we're in a discussion format, similar. And so I heard some concerns. I heard concerns expressed about the realtor for this. That was completely disclosed to us, the realtor to perform the work of purchasing documents home and working with him. That was completely disclosed and legal. So there hasn't been anything unethical about those transactions. And so it's troubling to me that I'm hearing that for the first time tonight. And also that I saw it in some emails coming across from the public. That's fine. The public didn't know they weren't part of the discussion. But we've had those discussions and that's already been cleared. So I don't like the innuendo and that insinuation that there was something unethical that happened here with that transaction. We also have full disclosure that Dr. Means was working with Ms. Ellis. He talked to the board about that and said he would like to continue using her services. The board agreed to that. When Dr. Maddox said that she wanted an RFP, we agreed to that. This is work that was going on prior to that request for that RFP to be sent. Dr. Means stated in our last property meeting that this was the last transaction that Ms. Ellis had been working on, that we would be issuing an RFP for any real estate transactions going forward. So I need for the public to understand that we're not operating in some vacuum as if we don't know what's happening. We are very deliberate in our process and in our thinking and trying to make sure that we are the best stewards of the county's funds and of your funds as well. So it does trouble me that we are here on the day of the vote and I haven't heard these concerns expressed. I appreciate Dr. Knox saying that you have sent a document to our board president. Well, I have been in that place where I've been reading thousands or hundreds of emails where everybody got a copy of that document. Had I gotten that ahead of time, then I would have been able to actually respond, as I understand it, from my history on this board, more succinctly, because I really hate the roundness. I want us to get to a place where we really do not try to fix the inequities of the past at the expense of making sure that we are doing the services that our children need today. So we know that to continue delaying this decision about a property, it's just going to be that. It's just going to be a continued delay. I cannot understand why we do not understand that when we made the proposal to put the building at West Broad, that was the original proposal for the new district office. The 65,000 square foot simply became the weapon that prevented that place from working, period. And then when we look at these other two places, by then we had already spent, I don't know how much, 30-something million dollars to build more onto the Paradise building. We moved all of the IT and the network department out there, and we created capacity out there. And so that would have diminished that 65,000 square feet that we needed, I would imagine, to something less. Now, you're shaking your head, but I'm only speaking from my memory, so just allow me to continue, if you will. So the fact that we have a building, a ready-built building, right, that we haven't had an architect look at, that who has not taken our design plans, our business requirements, and our needs, and laid that up against that to see what the possibilities are, is a concern to me. So what we have is a very intelligent and informed decision from I call it the physical plant department, who have looked at this space and said, well, this looks like it ought to work. Office for office, space for space, this ought to work. I don't think we have the answer to what our final decision, what our final building is going to look like. And then I'm going to take you one step further, since you want to walk down this heritage thing. It is appalling to me that if public education, which is the only thing that this board and this district is charged with doing, cannot have a board office that befits that responsibility to this community. And it does need to be in a prominent place. It does need to be an institution that we can respect. Maybe if we respected it more, we would manage it better. But I am simply at that place of not trying to correct all of the ills of the past on the backs of the children who are working every day to get the best education that they can, on the back of the staff that is trying every day to do the very, very best work that we can. We keep delaying things and putting things off because we get resistance. The 9 of us on this board have a whole lot more information than anybody in the public has. And if we are not able to put that together, and I will confess, it took me years to understand the operations of the school board. I've said that before, 4 years was my number, it's still my number, because that's about how long it took to get deeply into this. I am ready for us to acknowledge that we are not inherently brilliant about what we do, that it is a collaboration of all of us, that we really need to stay focused on the project at hand and recognize that the whole work of the administration is to run the day-to-day operations. And if they bring to us a business need, we have a moral and legal obligation to answer that need. If we need to address how we go forward and building equity into the decisions that we make, let's make that our priority as a board to decide how we do that. But I am really ready for us to stay laser focused on allowing this administration to move forward. Now, if we don't like what they're doing, vote it down. But it cannot be held hostage to the inequities of the past.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Dr. Becker? Okay, Dr. Maddox, And then, go ahead, okay.
I've tried to sit quietly tonight, but at the end of the day, right is right, wrong is wrong. We have to live by morals. We have to live by transparency. I'm glad that we got this information tonight, but we've had property meetings. I couldn't make the last meeting, I had to work, but that information was still not presented. And was that information presented?
At the most recent property meeting? The what now?
No.
No, I didn't see it.
Well, I didn't see that information printed anywhere, prior to tonight. And that's the issue that I continuously have a problem with. And I know that I'm going to be going with the white man, with John again, but I'm going to say that John, I never saw any of that John wrote or talked about tonight. But I echo a lot of what he said. And I don't do it for shame. We all have to do better with our practices and with the way that we communicate and with the way that we receive information. It is very tough being a board member and continuously being flooded with information in a political way. This information, I think, first of all, should have been presented to the board prior to tonight in this political setting. I just think that's just the right way to do business. But it's done so that we can get the people all wrapped up. And that's the way that we continue to do business. And that is just not right. And I've tried to be quiet. I've prayed let these just work out. But I'm going to have to start speaking and calling these things out. I agree with a lot of things that Ms. Davis said. But when it comes to, since my name was brought up about the property and about Ms. Ellis, we've had plenty of time to work through that process to get an RLP. We've had plenty of time to do that before this property vote right here. So my thing is, let's just do the right thing. I'm still trying to understand East Plus, but from what I understand, we made some promises with that last East Plus for Clark Middle, for the Maxine Eastham School, for School C. We made some promises, and now we think that people are going to trust us and vote for another East Plus, and then we're going to take some anticipated dollars and start spending these dollars that we don't even know if people are going to trust us after making the decisions that we're making right now with these East Plus dollars. That's my reality from what I'm understanding. We have to be good stewards of this money. We have to do what we say that we're going to do, and that is just not happening. So that's just where I am.
Thank you, Dr. Maddox. Dr. Dykeman, Mr. Worthy, and then Mr. Davis.
I just wanted to say that I understand that there have been a lot of locations that have been looked at. You've named a few of them. I know that there have likely been more since you started looking for property. A lot of us weren't here when you first discussed what the needs were and what the wants were for this building. I get stuck on the central location part. I understand the bus line part. I think that's important. I don't know that I feel like the district office has to be in a truly central location. The central locations in Athens are the most expensive locations in Athens. So in the comps that you showed us to look at the square footage and what the average square footage was or what it was for different buildings were all on millage and prints, which are really expensive areas of town. And I do think that we need a district office that serves the functions that the district office needs, but I don't feel like we need to spend $11 million to do it. It seems like a huge amount of money to me to spend on something that, not that it's not important, it's absolutely important, but it doesn't house any children. And so it feels like, at first when we were talking about it, we were talking about between $6 and $6.5 million, and that still seemed like a lot because it just is a lot. But it seemed reasonable for that size of a building, and then it came back with the purchase price just a little bit higher, which isn't that big of a deal. But then with $4.3 million in renovations, puts it at you know, we were talking about 6 million and now we're talking about 11 million, and that is almost double. So for me, that's my sticking point, and I wonder whether there are more properties that are out there that aren't maybe in this central location. Because I feel like, yes, the bus line is certainly important, but if we could find property that was outside, and I know that that's where you were looking because that's what you were tasked with, but I wonder whether we can talk about that again and whether that's actually that important.
Dr. Diamond, I would just say that this is the criteria. It was not about centrally located. It was simply around being on a bus line. A board member asked administration for comparables for business properties that were sold in that area, and that's the only reason why these comparables were provided.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you were kind of directed in this area, so I know that's why you were looking at it, but I also know that a number of us weren't here when the original office criteria were.
Administration wasn't directed to look in this specific area. As I cited earlier, we looked at Georgia Square Mall, we looked at the former Hobby Lobby building, we looked at as many facilities as possible. It just happened to be that the two most recent viable options were on Prince and Millage. That's all. I haven't mentioned it yet, but the fact that this property is adjacent to Clark Central High School is an advantage to the school system. But I just wanted to respond to your statements.
Yes, let me reinforce what you said there, Dr. Means, about the property located near Clark Central High School. And that's the first thing, because that is pointed out to Dr. Knox and I on Tuesday, which I was aware of that. You know, if you have an overflow of the school is right there, you can go to the auditorium. The next thing is this: Clark Central is landmark, folks. The only way you're going to expand, you will go up. You should have no patience. Big mega bucks for that. Now, the purchase of this property, as I said a few minutes ago, prime real estate. Enough about that. I think I heard several times a few minutes ago that this is the first time the board has seen and looked at this information pertaining to 394 Village Avenue. That's not true, folks. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. I'm holding it in my hand. It was passed out to us in the executive session. Dr. Means, do you mind flashing that last screen up there again? Here it is. This was passed out to all of us that attended the property committee meetings on the 19th. I'm happy that I brought it with me. Here's the other information here. Every figure up there, I'm holding it in my hand. Let's keep up with the information, folks. That's all I'm saying.
You did a PowerPoint presentation, but it was in the handout.
Not the square footage.
Not the square footage that we currently use.
I'm looking right.
Yeah,
And Dr. Diamond, you're accurate. There was a question that was brought up at the last executive session meeting where the question from the board member was, how much square footage do we use for district office functions currently? I shared with the board in executive session, I was not sure. I would have to talk to Mr. Gilbreth and the team to get that information. And so it's in the spirit of continuing the discussion and answering your questions, again, in a fair environment, in a transparent environment, that will answer any question that you have to help you make an informed decision.
Thank you. Thank you. I think there was someone, it was Mr. Davis that originally said, and then Dr. Knox, and then Dr. Berry.
Yeah, Charles, if I agree with you, it's prime real estate. I agree with you. And if you and I could combine our 401ks, maybe we can be realtor investors and do quite well for ourselves. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I mean, the school district's not in the business of buying and selling real estate. We're in the business of educating children. And I'm not, and Dr. Means, I know that this discussion, we've been talking about Gaines School property. We have 13 acres over there. You and I have talked about that multiple times. You and I both have high expectations for that property. I mean, and I think that we do recognize that the east side has been long neglected. I sat down with my commissioner and I sat down with my mayor, and I looked at the SPLOST proposals, and I just want to tell everyone that because my question was, we want to work with the county. We want to work with you. We want you to work with us on the sake of our kids. And so, whatever you're willing to do to help our kids in terms of after-school programs or whatever, we want that help. And we're willing to work with you on the old Gaines property. The SPLOST that will be up on the ballot this November, there were two potential sources of there were two things on the SPLOST that potentially could be used on that property. And I say, I know there's a lot of wheeling and dealing between the county and the school system and everything, but one is there's $14 million for a library. And both the mayor and my commissioner, more so the mayor, I think at this point, but anyway, really sees that, and he feels like that there's a strong sense among the county commission that would be a good spot. And we're talking about a 20,000 square foot building, perhaps 2 floors, and then of course parking spaces and beautification. So that's going to take some of that 13 acres. If the school system wants to do that, and that doesn't, we're not obligated to because it's our property. So we make that crystal clear, it's our property. The other SPLOST item is $4 million that the mayor says will, if the SPLOST passes, the county SPLOST, will be up for RFP. Now, that can be, the Boys and Girls Club can put in for that. Clark County School District can put in for that. The Land Trust can put in for that. And then the way that they process their RFPs, that $4 million may or may not end up with something that will be suitable for our young people on that property. That $4 million is meant for a facility for youth development. Okay, so we're talking about what I'm hoping, and again, I'm not part of the negotiations, all I do is vote things up and down, but I am hoping that we are able to get a library on that property and perhaps something else. That still leaves a lot of land left over. But we can talk about that later. I just want to kind of lay out the parameters and why I don't want to rush to judgment on this particular proposal that we have here. There are a couple of things, Dr. Means, I just want to ask you about. On the executive summary, it's very well specified in terms of plumbing, how much money is applied, as roofing, how much money that will take to fix the roof, electrical, and so on. There are a couple of ones that are left, and they make me a little nervous. One is under the heading asbestos. Asbestos. Thank you. I never had phonics in school, by the way. Is to be determined. Does that mean that there may be or may not be asbestos, or there probably is, and we don't know what would cost to remove it? And before you answer that, if he answers that, does that mean I'm out of time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that is one of my questions. The other question on your data sheet is, and if you can, I'm going to ask you 3 in a row, and then hopefully, and then maybe I can. Anyway, that's question number 1. Question number 2 deals with lighting. It says no LED and fixtures were older, presumably back to the 1970s, and there's no figure by that. So I'm kind of curious, what is that figure? If you don't know it, why is it there? And then my third question is that, we've done a great job with BHL and with Coral Middle School. And we had budgeted $10 billion of SPLOST 5 money, and BHL ended up 17 million, I believe, and Coral ended up 16 million. And I think we did a great job. But what we did was, when we did it, we wanted to make sure that it's the best it could be for our kids. And obviously, a central office, we want it to be the best it could be for our staff who are serving our kids. And so, where in your proposal is the possibility of it costing more than what these projections are? So those are my 3 questions. Asbestos, lighting, and cost overruns.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. In regards to the price point that we've identified for this building, we believe that the $11 million mark would be sufficient and would it takes into account potential overruns. I think the situation with BHL and Coil was contractor driven, and anytime you go through projects like this, you learn a great deal. It's also important to note that we have placed on the October agenda the potential to hire an architect that can address multiple projects. We believe having an architect on retainer would assist us in that process. Now, as it pertains to lighting, until you have an architect work with you and design the project, and you then finally identify a contractor who will then eventually select lighting fixtures, it's really difficult to come up with a final cost. And so those costs are projections based on the hard work of our operations team. And that's why it's difficult to give you a cost. In terms of asbestos, that's potentially in that facility, it's a building that was built in the early 1970s. You don't know if that material is in the facility or not until you start unearthing things, and that's where you find out. And that goes with a lot of projects that's connected with an older facility. That's why that number is unknown.
Okay, I think it was Dr. Berry and then Dr. Knox, and then Mr. Worthy. And after that, I'm going to encourage us to move forward, because we have a whole several hours at our work session to continue talking about this. So Dr. Berry, Dr. Knox, and then Mr. Worthy.
I think it's just out of pure curiosity, but so if we were to build something new, would you anticipate that something around that the same size as millage? So let's just say as an estimate 40,000 square. Would you estimate this building something new at that size would meet our needs? And also tonight you said that the estimated square footage cost per square foot would be between 200 and 250. So just again, out of curiosity, if we were to build something new, 40,000 square feet, we need
I think
something that would be.
I don't want to make that type of estimate. That's why we are seeking to get your approval of having an architect on retainer. That's the type of work that an architect and our SPLOST team or construction team can put harder numbers to. Right now, it would be strictly an estimate.
Okay, I have a pretty simple question. Do we have, did I miss perhaps their documents, the property, do we have an appraisal on 394 South Village? Has there been appraisal done? And if so, what was the appraisal?
I'm not sure. I would have to double check.
Okay, I think if it had been done, it would have been done by William Parker. So,
Do we have an
an appraisal
Is
of the
that
property. That's right.
They're on retainer?
I'm not talking about retainer,
But
no.
who would do the appraisal? Would it be the buyer or the seller?
I just know that William Parker would have done. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Worthy?
I just want to make one comment in conjunction with something that Dr. Meade said. Dr. Knox, you correct me if I'm wrong. I believe we were told Tuesday that that building was built in 1976.
73.
73. Well, that's just about the time the federal government was actually cracking down on buildings being built with asbestos in there. So chances are, what I'm saying now, that asbestos may not be in that building.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Madam President. I don't know if you're bringing the discussion to a close or not.
Got one question.
Is it something that can wait? Okay. That's right.
Is it possible that School C and the school on the east side will be in SPOS 6?
Cannot make that commitment. All schools see or advancing PE's facility. Madam President, I appreciate all the questions. I hope I answered those as well as I could. It's difficult to be a superintendent anywhere, even in good conditions. I have come to realize that perhaps I am generating reactions from the community that is making my effectiveness in leading the organization difficult for some. I understand that you have to have a level of tough skin and smile when there are attacks on your character. And so this is not about me, but I would be remiss if I did not state that Ms. Sarah Ellis did nothing to deserve the type of statements that were made this evening. I'm used to people calling or trying to draw connections and then make a judgment on my character. I guess that goes along with territory. But Ms. Ellis hasn't done anything to deserve what occurred here this evening. I have stated to the board for months now that Ms. Ellis has engaged in work, and I felt it would be unfair to her to immediately withdraw her. I have made a commitment to the board in executive session after it's been committed or it stated to me that the board was uncomfortable with Ms. Ellis serving as the real estate agent to develop an RFP. We've worked with Ms. Veronica Jackson in our procurement department to draft a document that will be completed once we move forward with these transactions, if there are any transactions. The commission made by the agent would not be paid by the school district. The seller would have to pay the agent. It's not the school system. And I guess the last thing I would just share is that I'm not interested in nor is the community interested in having intellectual, philosophical, political debates. I'm not here for that work. I understand that that's part of the job I have to do, but I just want the public to know and the board to know that when I do respond or rebut statements that are made, it's done in the name of, if I don't respond, then what happens is that there's a statement or there's a narrative that is in the public arena that goes unanswered. I'm not going to spend my remaining time this evening talking about 394 South Millage, addressing that issue, but I do want to be fair to the person who formerly served this community and this board, and I just want the public to know that these conversations have occurred in executive session. It is not accurate to say that things have been ignored or have not been addressed. And again, I'm used to the public perhaps characterizing my character, my morals in a certain way. It's disappointing that the people or some of the individuals that I have to work with in the name of children, in the true name of equity, not for political spin, that those individuals take the platform to twist it in a negative way. Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, thank you. Is this about?
I have a
because
question for you too.
We want to, I want to wrap this up.
Okay, but something was raised, and I just want to ask a question of board leadership.
Yeah.
How many properties and which properties does Ms. Ellis represent the district? Asking you to.
I know that Ms. Ellis has been that representative of the district since Dr. Means informed us that he was retaining her in 2018.
And so how many properties?
I believe she has been involved in all of the ones that have been brought to us for relocation of the district office.
So
that
just the
was
district
passed.
office?
That's it.
Just the district office?
I don't want to speak because I honestly do not know.
Thank you.
I'm speaking from the experience of the property committee. That's the only property that we look at. It's for the district office.
Okay.
We're not trying to buy any other property.
Madam President, I'm sorry. The behavior here is deplorable. It has been discussed in executive session in regards to the properties that Ms. Ellis has worked for the district in representing. This is the last property. And so I think it's really important to note this time because it has been stated in the public that board members feel that they can't ask questions. I want board members to ask questions, but when the questions are constructed in a way to shift public opinion or to reinforce a perspective, that's political grandstanding. And it makes the work of serving the school district that much more difficult.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move forward, and if there are existing questions, I would encourage us to ask those questions so that we have answers. I know we won't all be able to think of the questions that we have within the next week, so we may think of some, while we're there. But certainly, if there are additional questions, I'm going to encourage us to jot those down, ask Dr. Means, ask someone else who may be able to give you some clarity, so that we're not rehashing the same themes at the work session.
Is there an opportunity for the public to weigh in? Because that was one of the reasons that we were trying to achieve.
I would imagine typically, so I know several of us have probably received emails, just from what I've been able to gather tonight, phone calls, and if in fact this something that makes it to the agenda. But although by then it would be more of a formality. So I guess at this point, it's really about people reaching out to their board members, people reaching out to, I would encourage them to reach out to the school district as well with specific questions that we may not be able to, I may not be able to answer. There are some things that I can and some things that I can't address.
I mean, what we did during the, when Dr. Means presented the facility report, he actually created a form in which community people could ask questions, and then he would respond to them, and that became part of the anyway, part of the trail. Yeah. So perhaps something like that can happen again.
Madam President, I think this has been a very informative discussion for administration, for members of my team. Based on the exchange and the dialogue, we'll have to go back and decide what the recommendation is going to be from us, what recommendation we'll make on October 3rd. We're not making these recommendations in order to have conflict with the board. If there isn't will among the board to move forward with a recommendation, then perhaps we'll come to the October 3rd meeting to recommend that you cancel the purchase. And candidly, I think that's where I may be after this exchange this evening. We'll see what else emerges on October 3rd, but our team, we do want to work in an environment that isn't clouded with conflict and political grandstanding. And so if this is going to, if the off-ramp is to simply recommend to you to cancel the purchase, then that's what we may do in the name of just moving forward. So we can actually talk about teaching and learning and student achievement.
Thank you. So moving forward, this item 4.1 is related to the action to retain legal counsel for the Board of Education for the purpose of the advanced ed complaint. If I may preface this by, I know we've had a lot of discussion around this, and so I'm going to encourage us to move as efficiently as possible through this agenda item and the next agenda item. Okay? Let me just go ahead and open the floor. Dr. Yeager.
So I move to amend the resolution previously adopted to hire outside counsel by simplifying text to be the following language. Whereas the school district has received notice that Advanced Ed has received complaints regarding the Clark County school system, and whereas it is in the best interest of the school district that the complaints and allegations referred to in the notice be investigated by a person that is neutral, objective, unbiased, and independent of the Board of Education, any member of the Board of Education, the superintendent, and the school district's attorney, it is therefore resolved that the Board of Education shall retain a member in good standing at the State Bar of Georgia, special legal counsel, to investigate and prepare a response to the complaints and allegations referred to in the notice on behalf of the school district. The superintendent is hereby directed to make a recommendation for such counsel to the president of the Board of Education within 14 days, subject to the approval of the Board of Education. Terms and conditions of such legal counsel's relationship with the school district, including compensation, shall be set by the president of the Board of Education. It is further resolved that each member of the Board of Education will fully cooperate with and assist special legal counsel in the performance of his or her duties. Additionally, the superintendent and the members of his staff are hereby directed to fully cooperate and assist the special legal counsel in the performance of his or her duties.
So that was your motion.
And that was emailed this yesterday, I believe.
Okay, and that was was that the motion? Okay, is there a second? Okay, all right, and we are going to open up the floor for discussion.
If I can just explain, the reason for that was, I've been reading my Robert's Rules of Order, and there's a whole chapter on what to do if the First Amendment or the first resolution is not perfect, and this is an attempt to make the original resolution more perfect.
Dr. Dyke. Okay, I want to say one of the things I shared with Dr. Yeager is that as I continue to feel that we can accomplish the goal of hiring counsel related to the advanced ed complaint by a simple motion. And so as a result of that, I think we have the same goal, but I do think at this time the easiest and the clearest and the cleanest way to be able to obtain that counsel related to advanced ed would be simply by a motion directing, the superintendent to, as compatible with our charter, directing the superintendent to recommend counsel to the board.
I so move what you just said.
Easier than I thought. I was prepared to fight. Oh, come on, let's have a fight.
Well, but I think that, so I guess I should say underlying that in my head is rescinding the resolution itself, because the resolution itself still does not, I don't think I heard you say, Dr. Yeager, that it puts the role back on the superintendent to recommend counsel, or did it? Like ultimately, from what I understand, Mr. Pruitt to have said to us in that email is that in order for it to be compatible with our charter, is that although the board would select an attorney for counsel, that ultimately it would come by recommendation of the superintendent. And the board itself does not have any inherent authority to go
Correct.
apart.
I believe I read, the superintendent is hereby directed to make a recommendation for such counsel to the president of the Board of Education within 14 days.
So we want to question you. We have.
I think there is a different
So
motion.
you're doing a substitute motion?
Mr. Davis has made a substitute motion which needs to address first.
Yes. So
But I
let's-
think,
What I'm asking is for Lakeisha, we need to clarify who makes the recommendation, when the time frame is, what that person is supposed to do, and how they're gonna get compensated. So I would think that we would have to address those four issues.
We have to address that in a motion regarding how they're gonna get compensated and
Okay, maybe we can start all over again. Madam President, what's the recommendation that you're putting forward? Because I seconded it, but I'm trying to figure out what I seconded.
it was actually a portion of the resolution,
Okay.
just without all of the other.
Okay, why don't you read, and then I can confirm my second, and then Linda can.
All right, so the motion was that the superintendent be directed to make a recommendation for counsel to the president of the Board of Education to address all advanced ed matters within 14 days.
I second that again, double second.
Ms. Doherty.
Mr. Pruitt, you correct me if I'm wrong. I don't believe that this board can direct the superintendent to do anything. That's the same as telling the superintendent what to do.
Management issue, Mr. Pruitt, not a legal issue.
Say that again.
Management issue, not a legal issue.
Okay.
And
And I want to be sort of clear as well, because I do value transparency. Dr. Mason, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I do think that all of us have seen the correspondence, from the early resolution, the correspondence from Mr. Pruitt, questions related to that, as well as I've spoken with Dr. Meeks about this. And so I think in a good faith effort on behalf of all 10 of us, there's just a desire to move forward with the least amount of chaos, tension possible. And so the ultimate goal is for the board to, to feel protected in a sense and feel that they have access to legal counsel. And that has been something that we've all discussed with each other, that I've discussed with Dr. Meeks as well, and that he's been open to. My fear was that we left our past the meetings, I think maybe last month or the month before, all sort of in different places.
So if I may take my seat, I want to clarify that the resolution with the substitute motion is to hire legal counsel to represent the district. Right? This is not specific to the board. The board isn't hiring an attorney or asking anybody to hire an attorney for the board. This legal counsel will simply represent the entire district in matters regarding advanced ed. That is the extent of this motion, as I understand it. If it is not, then I will offer to secondly amend the motion. The resolution is no, and we need to, as a board, with the aid of this council, and I don't know if we can do that in 2 weeks with an RFP to go out for a council. So I'm concerned about that time frame. But the board then needs to meet with that council and allow them to help us come up with what is it that we think they need to do for whatever thing they're in charge of.
Okay. Ms. Worthy.
Here again, Mr. Pruitt, you may have to confirm this. Looking at the response that Dr. Meeks has made to advance aid pertaining to these complaints, violations, laws, policies, etc. I still go back to what I read earlier in the board meeting. Now, if these violations have taken place in a legal constituted meeting, board members will have every right to try to request an attorney for legal advice, legal counsel. As I read, I don't think that's happened. I don't think some of these violations, maybe some of them took place in a legal constituted meeting, but some of them didn't. I think as we continue to deal with this, we are getting deeper and deeper into legal or illegal things. Sorry, not legal, but illegal kinds of things. So we need to be careful with this.
Okay, Dr. Knox? And then I think we'll be ready to go ahead and make a decision.
I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Worthy said. So, are you saying that some of the allegations that are actually in the advanced ed complaint occurred in illegal meetings?
No, I didn't say that.
No, tell me
What I'm saying is this: it didn't occur in a legal constituted meeting like where we are now. It occurred outside of meetings. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. There is a question out there regarding 14 days, if it's realistic, if we want to keep that as a part of the motion, but right now it is a part of the motion. Okay, so we have the motion, the second, we've had discussion, but let me read the motion again for clarity. All right, and that is that the superintendent is, the motion that the superintendent be directed to make a recommendation for counsel to the president of the Board of Education within 14 days to address, to address advanced ed matters. And of course, that's with the understanding to reiterate that this legal counsel would be representative of the district. And that's what I'm hearing. Okay.
Madam President, I was trying to get this together for.
Okay.
Would this word be okay? Motion is to direct the superintendent to recommend report today, legal counsel to represent CCSD.
Mike, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you get to the mic, please?
The motion is to direct the superintendent to recommend within 14 days legal counsel to represent CCSD in all matters regarding the advanced ED complaint.
Yes, that's the
Okay.
motion.
Okay.
Oh, so that, everybody hear that motion?
That's we need now, whatever the new amendments.
Okay, all in favor of that motion, if you.
Madam President, I'm up before,
Okay.
I take there's a professional challenge for me with the wording of directing the superintendent to do anything. If you want to request,
Okay, can you put requests in
because
there?
and I just want to state for the board and the community's sake, you and I have talked. And I am in agreement with this. So this is not an issue of being an obstacle. But we've had this challenge before with the language of directing.
Okay.
And I think that's what Mr. Pruitt was trying to state earlier in terms of your management style. If you're directing, then that sends a chilling effect to the office.
Okay, do we want, how do you all feel about requests? I think it's a one word replacement.
I mean, the only reason it wasn't in the original motion, the reason it was in there is because Mr. Pruitt recommended it be in there to be clear. So whatever Dr. Beans feels comfortable with, it's the outcome that I'm concerned about. I don't want Dr. Beans to think we're just trying to be, pushy. It's we're trying to follow legal advice.
Okay, so let me sort of get us back. Would request get us to the same goal?
Sure. I didn't say you had to say direct versus request. I said the superintendent had to make a recommendation.
Okay, and will you reread that for us before we vote, just to be,
Okay.
just for the sake of clarity?
First, so here would be microphone.
Yeah, I used to sit at the table and have one. So, assuming you want to change the wording to request, it would say the motion is to request that the superintendent to recommend within 14 days legal counsel to represent CCSD in all matters regarding the advanced ED complaint.
Okay. Are there any, do we hear that before we take a vote?
Before we take a vote, I want just to go back unless I'm having amnesia. The reason why we are here is because the superintendent clearly stated that he was not going to recommend an attorney. So that's why we're here. I don't want this victim role. I can't just keep sitting here. I've been quiet a lot tonight. But the reason why we're here right now is because Dr. Means clearly stated that he would not recommend an attorney. Did he not say that? That's why we're here, Ms. Davis, okay? That's why we're at this place right now. That's why the word direct was even put in. We didn't want to put in the word direct. But as far as I remember, that Mike did say that we would use that word instead of request. But that's the only reason why we're at this place. It wasn't because we are mean and we're after the superintendent and we wanted to do that. It's because he stated that he would not recommend that we have an attorney after he had one to do the same exact thing.
Okay. Your hands up for a question or? Okay. After this comment, we'll go ahead and take the vote.
And so I believe that we are here because the resolution as adopted was not legal. All right.
Okay. So moving forward, all of those in favor.
Wait, Madam President, procedurally, you you've got an amendment to a standing motion that was on the floor, Dr. Knox. That's why I'm saying something.
Oh, no, I'm fine.
Okay.
I
So,
want you to say it.
okay.
Please say it.
So a couple of ways you can do this. You could amend the motion. Mr. Davis could ask to amend that motion. The person who seconded it could agree to that second. If there's no objection from the floor or from any other members, we can go forward. Is that the way we want to do this?
Yes.
Okay. Who seconded Mr. Davis's motion? I think it was Dr. Dyer. It wasn't.
I think it was, no, it was, you wasn't? No, it was. Okay. What do we need to do? What does the person who's
Will somebody second the motion now? Dr. Maddox has seconded the motion. Is there any objection from any board member to Mr. Davis's amendment to his motion?
Say that again?
Is there any objection to Mr. Davis's amendment to his
Because
motion?
I'm gonna vote no for all of it.
All right, we'll do it the other way. Mr. Davis, are you making that as a substitute motion?
Yes.
Do we have a second to the substitute motion? Linda Davis has seconded. Now you have a motion you can vote on.
Okay, so all in favor of Mr. Davis's substitute motion, which was read by Mr. Pruitt, if you would show by raising of your hand. Okay, and then all of those that are opposed. Okay, thank you. So that that motion carried. All right. Item,
Yeah,
yes,
since Dr. Means is board, I apologize, I have to go.
I remember you saying that, yes, thank you, yes. Thank you for letting us know, Dr. Beard.
For item 5, I'd ask that we table that until we have legal counsel.
Okay. So I put that out there, Ms. Davis. So number 5 for, just for the public is the action to draft a response to advance ed pertaining to the complaint filed by a community member. And so one of the things that Dr. Means had mentioned was that the board was in a position to complete or develop a response to his response. And at this point, I do believe that it's important that the board has a response and that that we don't wait on counsel, while that may be a part of their role in the future. Right now, over the next couple of weeks, we do have the response that you shared with us, and then we have that out there. But at this point, the board has not responded to your response.
Madam President, I think the question you need to reflect on as a body is, are you responding to the August 9th complaint, or are you responding to a response? And you can respond to the response, or as a body, you can take the August 9th letter, which was part of your argument a couple of weeks ago, and respond to say, yes, there's evidence that the board has been in violation of the advanced ed standards, or no, there isn't. I respectfully submit, I don't think there's anything positive that can come from the board responding to a response. Now, if you want to respond to the August 9th complaint, that's a different path. Because board members have already responded to my response in the media already. And so I don't think that's what the body politic should be doing. I would respectfully state, you should examine the advanced ed standards and decide if you believe in your response if there was a violation or not. If you don't believe there's evidence that there was a violation, then that is your response. I think we kind of start, there's mudslinging that you respond to a response.
So just to be clear, from going back and watching our board meetings a few times, responding to the response was something that you referenced a few times. And so one of my goals is to be within the parameters. It wasn't, if we go back to that conversation, the process. There were questions about what the process would be, right? And so the superintendent and the district staff or council decided that the process itself would be you and your team responding to the advance ed complaint. So my wording of response to the response came directly from the suggestions that you made. My only goal at this point is that, yeah, sure, people have, out of necessity, made their individual responses, but at this point, we don't have a response, just a general response from the board addressing what has been shared.
So I think there's two things that you're describing. So procedurally, if there's a need for the entire board to respond to the response from the office of the superintendent, you can obviously make that response as a body official. But advanced ed will ask the question, does the Board of Education believe that there have been violations of the standards? That should be the space that you're in, not to respond to what the office of the superintendent stated. And so if I misstated that during that meeting, I apologize. What I was referencing was the response from the Board of Education should, and you still have the right to respond to the alleged complaint from August 9th. And that should be the role of the Board of Education to examine the advanced ed standards, look at the evidence, and then you as a body say, yes, we agree that there's been a violation, or no, we don't.
Right, and so I think that was the underlying goal initially.
Then we're on the same page.
To be able to say those things, but from my understanding, and I don't want to put any words in other people's mouths, but from my understanding, doing so at that time would have almost could have been viewed as the board using power or usurping the power of that particular complaint and saying, hey, yeah, the superintendent in his office, they're going to respond, but now the board is getting ready to respond to the complaint. And so perhaps it's a timing thing now that you have submitted your response, and now, I think that's fine.
So just so we have clarity, the response from the board will be to the alleged complaint from August 9th, from the August 9th letter. And I think that's where, working with legal counsel, the board would want to examine the standards and make a determination as a board on if you believe that the alleged violations occurred or not. I believe that's what you're just, so I just want to make sure that we're all clear and the public's clear. That's what your response would be grounded.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
And one way to do this would be to follow the advice of our counsel, Mike Pruitt, because he wrote all of us, team of 10 here, and asked us to, quote, make full, complete disclosure of any and all information you have that could have any bearing on the allegations described in the letter from Advance Ed. And so I think that's consistent with what was just mentioned. And so that would be one way to go forward.
And so I guess at this point, I do want to respect that people may not be in the same place. So Ms. Davis, I've heard you mention that I believe a response is better suited for really our counsel. And, somebody, I'm open to being, convinced otherwise that we need a response with them.
At this point, Dr. Means has submitted his response to Advance Ed, and my understanding is that given his response, Advance Ed will decide what they want to do, right? Whether they'll come and investigate what they will decide to do. So I wondered if we have any idea what that timeline is and whether we want to submit a response prior to them asking us for specific information that they may ask us for once they review the response. And I am open, I just was putting that out for consideration. Do you have any idea what their next step might be?
I don't know. I know that Advanced Ed is curious if the board will submit a response to the August 9th letter. And so the question on the floor is if you want to develop a response to the August 9th letter, that actually would frame the work of your legal counsel very well, to have someone who can walk you through that process. It would be beneficial to you to move in that direction.
Dr. Yeager, Ms. Davis, and then Dr. May.
I was just going to agree, and thank you for saying that, because I think our job as a school board is to defend our district, and I think it's fair for us to try to put our thoughts together on how we feel we're following the guidelines and following the protocols and defend ourselves in that regard. Despite the chaos, I've had people in this community tell me that this board is the strongest and most highly functional board they've seen in 20 years. So I would like to put that out there and say that to them instead before they arrive and start asking questions. I would like to be able to show what we have been doing in a positive light as best we can. Okay? Thank you.
I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I really would like for there to be more order in terms of how we go about collecting this information. So under the direction and auspices of the council that we're going to hire, I would honestly like for us to do an embargo and just not open our mouths until that attorney gets here, and then we can kind of move down the path together so that we don't have so many things to retract and counterpoint on. I don't know if we can do that. I think we can express ourselves, but I would really like to, we have agreed and we have, to hire counsel to allow the council to do their work and work with us to form whatever response we may think about. That's just how I feel.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I believe that time is of the essence, and I'm not sure when we will get this attorney. I believe that we should receive the same rights as the superintendent, as he pulled this information together. I would like us to immediately begin to draft and pull our information together, and hopefully that attorney will come in the middle. But I really would appreciate us putting it together sooner.
Okay. Mr. Davis and then Dr. Knox.
This is one of the most confusing things that I think we've gotten ourselves into, because the school district needs a special counsel on this subject, and that's why I voted for it. We are a body of 10. So by all right, all 10 of us will be consulting with this special counsel. Dr. Means has taken another attorney who worked for the district to help craft his response without our consultation. I don't know how to make sense of that. So I mean, I lay that out there because I'm confused how a group of 10 will be taking the advice of the attorney, but at the same time have one of the 10 already have crafted a response to the ethics complaint, unbeknownst to us as the remaining body of 10. So I'm kind of interested in terms of how the superintendent looks at that, and so I just state that because it just seems a very unusual situation.
I'd like to ask you to have that conversation with the superintendent. But again, when it comes time for us to come together as a district and form a complaint, let's use the council that we are hiring to do that. A couple of things will happen. That frees Mike Pruitt and his team to do the work of the district that suffers because of our volumes of questions that we are bombarding this with about this. So we can kind of put ourselves, just put a pause button here and go forward with the advice of counsel. Then I think that's critical. Now, I think what we haven't talked about is, you know, what parameters we want to ask Dr. Means to include in hiring that counsel. That's probably a better conversation for us to have. If there are some specific things that we want to do as we ask for that counsel, then I think that conversation needs to happen among the board. If you don't want to use the counsel that Dr. Means has used in the past, then that needs to be said. If we want this counsel to be somebody from Georgia, that needs to be said. So those are the things that I think become our work in getting to an RFP to get that counsel in place. That's my I hate to think about it.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and, sure.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
I
very
think
much.
I pointed to you.
Right.
Before you. Okay.
Okay, yes. I just wanted to second what, informally obviously, what Tawana said. I don't think this is the time to press pause. I think this is the time to press play. And I just want to say that I am fully ready, as I said to you earlier today, Dr. Gann, I am fully ready to contribute to the report from the board to advance it, following what our counsel that was helping us at that point, Mike Pruitt, said that we should do, which is to pool our information about any and all violations. So I'm fully ready.
Well, great.
Okay. Linda asked me to talk slowly, but she did raise a good point. If Dr. Means recommends the same firm that he used to write his response to the August 9th complaint, then I am confused even more. So I don't know. Linda did raise a good point. Do we want us to make any stipulation? I know we've already voted, but is that an issue? I don't know. I mean, in terms of Dr. Means and where he's coming from.
I would imagine that those parameters would be the conversations that we would have and then share those with the superintendent. That's what I'm imagining. I didn't see that as needing to be as specific in the motion, just like the work of, the work of it replying to advance ed. I didn't see that we needed to specify, that the attorney will provide a response. The attorney will do this because there are just things that we don't know at the time, at this time. So, but did others sense that as okay? So it is here for action. I hear people in sort of different places, but I am going to go ahead and make or ask if there's a motion. I guess I can make it too. And a motion is there a motion on the floor to draft a response to advance ed regarding the August 9th letter?
Are you making the motion?
I'm asking for one.
I would make that motion for, I move that we begin working towards putting a response together for the advanced ED.
A second.
Okay. Is there any more discussion regarding this?
I have one discussion, and it doesn't have to be something that's decided right now, but something to think about is the way in which this will be drafted and whether it should be a committee or how it should start. I mean, obviously everybody should contribute, but sort of practically how this will happen.
So based on the time frame, I personally think that the best way at this time would be for, Linda and I can be tasked with the letter, but with the input from the board, I think if we try to create a, standing committee or an ad hoc committee, it could very well draw out The response, I will say, I don't anticipate the response getting into the weeds of everything, but again, I think the most important thing is that there is input from the board, sort of similar to how we did the process with PSC. Like, we gather the information, we synthesize it, and to be sure that we were actually addressing what, the questions that everyone had. And so in this instance, I would imagine that would be a more efficient way. I'm open to other suggestions.
Could you repeat that motion since
I believe I made a motion to move forward on putting together a response to the advanced ED complaint as a board.
Second by Dr. Bennett.
So we're still just discussion?
And,
So like, auto accident, lawyer told me that don't say anything to anyone, call me. So I'm following that premise, even in this discussion. I think that we don't offer anything, we call the attorney and let them do the work, but okay, that's my discussion.
I don't understand what she's talking about.
It's the same thing, that we shouldn't write a response. We're hiring an attorney to represent us with the advanced ed complaint. Why are we now taking it from the attorney and writing a response? I'm just asking that question.
We do not yet have an attorney,
Yes.
and I believe at this time that we should start drafting whatever so that when the attorney comes, we have the information available and ready.
I think what we also probably should consider, and I had this conversation with other people that have been involved with advanced ed and been coming in to do work with their districts. This isn't a must do by tomorrow thing. There is no 2-week interval here that we have to meet. These timelines are very negotiable. Advanced ed is not interested in coming in here trying to take our accreditation for what they want us to resolve this complaint. So there is no, I heard you say time is of the essence.
We don't have the documentation saying any of that you're talking about, so I will not sit and wait. I believe that we need to keep
I'm
moving.
saying that I spoke from experience of people who have been through this with advanced ed.
Okay, Dr. Knox, and then we'll be ready to take the vote.
Yeah, I hate to do this, but I am going to follow up. Was Ms. Davis representing the board when she talked to people about this process?
Absolutely, myself as a board member, speaking to my sister-in-law who was the president of the board of Clayton County when they went under advanced ed scrutiny.
I just didn't want it to be like what Mr.
And so
Worthy
that
had
happened
accused Greg of.
months ago, before we got to this place.
Oh, okay, months
She said,
ago.
make sure that as a board, that you are doing the things that you are required to do. And yes, it's back and forth, it's a negotiation with advanced ed, that it is not their sole purpose in life to come down and take somebody's accreditation.
Right, okay.
Very negotiable. But
Okay.
she is also well connected, so, if we need to ask for grace, I can do that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting into what Mr. Worthy warns us about all the time, about representing the board. Even if you speak as an individual, we've been told, we've heard Dr. Means say it, and we've heard Mr. Worthy say it, that's a really
So
great.
among the people that call me Dr. Knox are the people that read about us. And they call and say, we went through this, and let me just tell you, it's not that scary, just take your time, make sure that you're doing it. And so that's the kind of encouragement I have. And I can share that with you, that's like a.
And so, and also, let me just wrap this up before we go. If I heard you correctly, Dr. Means, advanced ed is expecting a response regarding the August 9th. So it's not it won't be out of the blue if they receive something. All right, so all in favor of the motion, can you say the motion one more time so it's clear?
I believe the motion is to move forward on preparing a response to advanced ed while we wait. I'll just stop before the motion for advanced ed.
Okay, so yes, we had a second. All in favor, you would show by raising hands. Okay, and all opposed, same sign. Okay.
Oh,
We are at item 6. Motion to adjourn. Motion second. Okay, all in favor? Mr. Worthy, okay.
Oh, yeah.